We humans, more than any other species, have an incredible capacity to learn. They say that we learn something new every day. And while much of our time is spent in formal learning environments, the majority of our learning doesn't come from a textbook.
And resiliency is a learned behavior. We all have the same ability to be resilient. We learn it through our hardships and our struggles, and sometimes people like myself are forced to be resilient. So I think when you're forced to, you become resilient a lot quicker because there's no other choice.
On some level, we have all learned something. MTNmeister is the podcast that explores topics like these by finding examples of those topics in the extremes. Who are the mountain... Just kidding. For those of you who don't know why that was funny, go back and listen to all 100 plus of our episodes on iTunes or on our website or wherever. For those of you who are MTNmeister veterans, I'm taking out that 30-second intro to open up space for something maybe you'd rather hear. Like you can get 20% off of a tiny little medical kit that can fit into any bag that you'd like. Too often, med kits are left out of bags because they take up too much room. Not this one. Go to our website. It's under the deals section. All you have to do is type in the code Meister at checkout, and you'll get 20% off. Thanks. Back to the show. Hello, Meister fans. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode. Today on the show, we welcome Aaron Scheidies. Aaron, hi.
How's it going?
It's great. Life is good in the podcast world. Good morning, by the way. It is, 7 a.m. where you are on the West Coast?
Yeah, I'm an early riser, though, so this is like, I've been up for a couple hours now, so.
Good. When you first wake up, your voice is much lower, so I can't host podcasts within like 3 hours after I wake up. Otherwise, my voice sounds different.
I'll probably become high-pitched later in the day.
Maybe throughout the interview, your voice will get higher and higher until you sound like this.
Yes, quite possibly.
For the listeners who don't know who Aaron Scheidies is, he has traveled around the globe, competing in over 200 triathlons. But before all of this, at 9 years of age, Aaron was having trouble seeing the chalkboard. This eventually led to him being diagnosed with a condition called Stargardt's disease, which is a common form of inherited juvenile macular degeneration. Aaron now has 10% of the vision of a fully sighted person, but that hasn't stopped him from becoming an 8-time world champ, an 8-time national champ, and a guest on the MTNmeister podcast. Aaron Scheidies, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go back. Let's start from the beginning when you had trouble seeing the chalkboard. That was second grade, and actually a lot of us probably had that issue when we were in second grade, but it didn't turn out to be something so severe. So what happened that first day?
When I was in second grade, my teachers just started noticing that I wasn't seeing the chalkboard. I wasn't seeing books very clearly or had difficulty with reading books. And so they did pretty much what any teacher would do for any other student that was having these troubles, and told my parents and told me I should probably go to the eye doctor and get checked out, and that was the right thing to do. And at that time, I'm in second grade. I had no idea what was going on. For the next couple of years, even with all this testing and stuff like that, it was actually more of a hard time on my parents than me, because I'm just trying to live the life of a kid and didn't know what was going on. So my parents struggled with it. Obviously, no parent wants a kid that has any sort of debilitating or so-called disability, and so they really mentally struggled with that. And I just kind of lived my life when I was in those second grade to fourth grade years, where for me, I didn't know. For all I know, everybody else was living in the same boat as me, even though I was going to every eye doctor in the state of Michigan. And it was kind of a struggle looking back at it. And I do kind of remember how, some would say ridiculous it was, just because they couldn't figure out what was going on through using glasses and all the tests that they have. So then they basically told my parents that they thought I was doing it for attention, and I had to get psychological tests and neurological tests and all that. And so that's where, looking back, I kind of am like, man, so if we can't figure out something, we just assume someone's, kind of making it up.
Right.
So that's kind of where I look back, and it's kind of like, man. But when I was in that time period of, and I'm just talking 2nd through 4th grade, I was just in my own little kid world.
That's a little disturbing and depressing what you said, that, like jumping straight to the conclusion that since we can't figure this out, it's probably neurological. Ooh, yeah. So legal blindness is considered anything worse than 2200 while wearing corrective lenses, is what I saw. You are what?
My vision now, once you get past the 2400, which is the E on the eye chart, you pretty much, then they start using other sort of things like seeing 2 fingers or 3 fingers or whatever from a certain distance. And right now, I can see that E, the 2400 acuity level on the eye chart, from 2 feet away.
From 2
so
feet, okay.
not 20 feet. So if you were to equate that out into the 2200 or 2400 kind of system, it would be something like, it's like 28,000 or something. So it's something astronomical. But so that's why I kind of just tell people, I see blurry blobs, I see their kind of silhouettes, and I see movements, and I can see color, but it's all a blur, and it's just kind of moving or stagnant blobs.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that I did not know that 2400 was the E. Learned something new. So
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, they have on the eye chart on the side, they always have the acuities over on the right hand side, the 2020 and the 2040 and so forth, so as it gets bigger and bigger letters.
I never realized that. Maybe I just couldn't see them.
Yeah, but the funny thing is it was so funny because I would continue going to the eye chart, or the eye doctor, and they would continue to use the eye chart, like the same eye chart. And so I would, they'd say, well, what's the letter on the top, and what's the next letters? And I'd be thinking in my head, and still to this day, well, do you want me to tell you what the letter is, or do you want me to tell you if I can see the letter?
Wow!
I've memorized the eye chart. I can tell you what the eye chart is.
Right. You could probably run top to bottom on the eye chart.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I see the eye chart, or can I tell you the letters I'm seeing? No.
That's pretty funny. So 2nd through 4th grade, you said you have this. You're just a little kid. Things probably started to get difficult at some point in time. What were the hardest times?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, the hardest times by far were, and I think for any person without a visual problem or anything like that at all, my teenage years, kind of 6th through 9th grade, 10th grade, were definitely the hardest times because I got diagnosed actually with my condition. I believe I was in 6th grade. So it took 4 years, of that, going around eye doctors all over Michigan and everywhere, and finally getting diagnosed. And so, but then when you get into those teenage years, everybody's trying to seek out and find who they really are, and everyone's trying to be normal, because if you're not normal, or the quote unquote normal, then somebody's gonna find something to pick on you about. And so yeah, I mean, I really became the center of attention for other kids to pick on me and that kind of stuff, and then started to question why me. And that's when I started, really going through the grieving process of understanding what my condition is and what this will kind of entail for the future for me, and realizing that this is just normal for me. But that was a 3-year, struggle to come to that understanding. And there's still times today that, I'm kind of like, well, if I didn't have this, I could do this. But I've definitely overcome my vision and have, I'd say, bigger obstacles than my vision now to to overcome.
Hearing you say this, I just saw a movie the other day called The Imitation Game. And actually, the Academy Awards are coming up and may, in fact, have already happened by the time this is released. But there's this great quote in the movie, and it kind of reminds me of what you just talked about there. It goes, "Sometimes it is the people no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine." And just hearing you talk about your childhood and how things have played out for you since with your very successful career in triathlon, maybe people weren't imagining anything of you, and you did something that no one can imagine. So let's get into triathlon. How did you find the sport?
You know what? I really just discovered triathlon as a product of really going through that grieving process of getting through and accepting my vision loss, because I was in a very, very hard time and struggled. And when I was in my freshman year of high school, I was finally diagnosed, but was going through this for the last 2 or so years before that, having an eating disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder and depression kind of all in one. And I think it started, well, the depression I think started from just the kind of fact that I had this vision problem, but the OCD started from checking the clock because I didn't have the confidence in myself to think that I saw the clock right or saw something else right. So I started checking things and looking them back and back multiple times and thinking I had to do it, and it became a compulsive kind of behavior. And then I started doing that and other things, and along with an eating disorder. And I mean, there was definite suicidal thoughts, almost even plans. But going into in my freshman year of high school, my brother asked me if I wanted to join the swim team. He noticed I was struggling. And, really when I went out for the swim team and just getting in the water, really kind of freed myself and gave me that relief from all the pressures of society and an outlet. And then, I started just really loving the endurance events, endurance sports. And then I started doing track and cross country the rest of the years of my high school, and just fell in love with it. And then and I explain this to people because I think a lot of people have this idea that, well, some people are just stronger than others, or some people are just more mentally tough than others. And I explain that I learned how to be resilient, and resiliency is a learned behavior. We all have the same ability to be resilient. It's just we learn it through our hardships and our struggles, and sometimes people like myself are forced to be resilient. So I think when you're forced to, you become resilient a lot quicker because there's no other choice. So after I kind of learned how to just overcome things and learn to be resilient, and I really started looking out for other challenges. And that's when, going to my senior year of high school, I saw a little sprint triathlon. And at that time, I had way better vision than I do now, but I was probably at that 2400 visual acuity. And I told my parents I wanted to do it. And that's a good thing. My parents they never sheltered me, and they might have been concerned and worried, but they never said, you can't do this, we're worried you're going to get hurt or whatever. And so my parents drove the bike course and the run course the night before, and I memorized it, and they told me different landmarks and things, and I just kind of followed the white line on the bike and hoped that there was someone else close by me, because if someone was, within 20 yards of me at that point, I could still keep them a blob in my sight.
So this is when you're on the bike by yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. So this was when I started doing triathlons in about 2000, 1999, actually. I did my first couple years of triathlon on my own. Wow. A very dangerous thing, but that's what I've always been, as a risk taker. And so that's really how I got into triathlon. I said I just wanted to challenge myself and do something even more difficult than the swimming and the running that I was doing. And I always tell people, triathlons, it's kind of like Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. So once you do one triathlon, you kind of just continue them. And you don't see many people doing just one triathlon in their life and not doing another one.
your second best theory there, your first is obviously that Pringles quote, but your second best was what you said about resiliency there. That was so cool. And like, again, this is why it's so important to step outside of the comfort zone for people who aren't forced outside of the comfort zone, because like you said, it's learned. It's only something that you're going to learn when you experience it. That was cool.
Yeah, in those first couple of years, I just followed splashes in the swim. I didn't know where the buoys were or anything. I just followed splashes, and then I had memorized the bike course and all the potholes and everything, so I got myself in the position, and then I also used anybody that was right next to me or the white line to kind of stay on course and on the bike and then also on the run. So it was definitely a lot more dangerous then, but it gave many stories to tell. And
I'm sure. Tell us a story. Like, do you have a go-to story?
Well, for example, I'll give you a good story that it was not in a race,
Okay.
but at that time, I actually did ride my bike on my own. Like, I was at Michigan State. That's where I went to undergrad, and they have this river path that everybody walks their bike, rides their bike to class. And in the winter, they've warmed the path because to get the ice off and all that kind of stuff, and for safety. And so right next to the path, there's the river and the ducks. The ducks have now found that the path is warmed, so they go and sit on the path. Well, I was, just riding my bike back from actually triathlon club practice, and just dodging blobs, and I had every crack and crevice pretty much on that campus memorized, and like boom, I hit a speed bump or something, and it quacked, and then I realized it was a duck, but I felt so bad. If it was a duck, and I would have killed it. So I just was like, and I just kept going, because now in my head, I'll never know if I really killed the duck. The duck's still alive in my head. So that was my duck story. And there's many other stories of me hitting like concrete pillars and things like that, going down, thinking that I'm just riding my bike on a straight sidewalk. Then all of a sudden there's stairs, and next thing you know, I'm going down the stairs on my bike. And
Wow.
yeah. There's many, and then I hit the parked car, and that one pretty much sealed the deal.
That's starting to get to be an expensive bike ride, right?
I probably should, not ride anymore on my own.
So let's go to the races now, because I'm trying to figure out how you even do this. So I was doing a little bit of research. I watched a few highlight reels. We're going to try to put our listeners with you and me during this race. And that's kind of the beauty of a podcast. We can take listeners from, we'll take them from their commute to work, and we'll put them in your shoes. So let's do some swimming, biking, and running. So I honestly can't swim in a straight line with full vision, but I'm assuming you can. So let's start with the swim.
So in the swim, and in all aspects of the race, I always try to have my guide explain the course and give me kind of a visual for my mind of the direction, the shape, everything kind of the course, so that when I'm going through it and he turns, because my guide swims right next to me, and we have a tether around our waist, and the tether is pretty much solely used for proprioception for me. It's used for me to feel where he is. And so now they have rules on how long the tether can be and all that kind of stuff, because they don't want the guide to be an advantage or pulling the athlete, so that you have to swim side by side, and so you use the tether as a proprioceptive device. So
is it possible for the tethers to get tangled? Because swimming at the beginning of a triathlon is very crowded, right?
It is, and it definitely has happened in the past. Now, with big races and things like that, and big starts, the tether rule too has they made the tethers maximum length pretty short, so it can't be too long. It can happen that you can get tangled, but that's and this is why the guide, and I commend and am so grateful for having my guides. The guide has such a difficult job of first they have to swim the course and know the course as if they were doing it as their own individual self, and then they have to always be aware of where every single other person is on the course, because they have to be planning ahead. That means they're going to be using a lot more energy to sight for the buoys, sight for other people, because they have to plan ahead and navigate not only themselves but me through the course. And so as they swim, and I just swim right next to them, and I do have some vision, so I can kind of see his arm motion with every stroke. So, that's in the swim where it's really the tether and the proprioceptive input as well as the information that he's told me from beforehand. If I know there's 2 turns, then I know when he's all of a sudden pulling to turn, then that's 1 turn, and then the next time would be a 2nd turn, and then we don't have any more turns. So I really use the tether as the input, sensory input for me to know which way to go.
I like that, the sensory input. Yeah. Yeah,
with the swim, that's where you can't communicate with the guide verbally for the most part, and so you have to have some sort of method, nonverbal communication that you guys can work together.
Interesting. All right. So you finish the swim. Now you've got to move to the bike, but first you have the transition of like putting on bike shoes and such, right?
Yeah, I mean the transition. I think for many people, blind. Well, to be honest, the transition I think for many triathletes, just in general, with sight is one of the more difficult parts.
Right.
But yeah, the transition can be very difficult because if I don't, let's say, see my shoes or see a blob or whatnot, then I either am searching with my hand or yelling to my guide, and it can be a frantic kind of moment. And then there's rules about the order you have to put on your helmet before you touch the bike, and me and my guide both have to do that at once. So it's that's where the teamwork of the sport comes in. And so, but that's the transition, and then we have to run our bikes through transition. I hold on to the back of the seat of the bike or just touch the seat so I know where he's going as he leads us out of transition. And again, he has to know where to go. So again, this is where I'm talking about the guide has such a job to do because they have to pre-plan everything. They have to know everything, because the last thing the guide wants to do is let down the athlete or not be look like he knows what he's doing or whatever. So and then we go onto the bike and we ride a tandem bike, 2-person bike. There's always question. Well, I actually get the question if I ride on the front.
That was my question, but I looked it up and I saw that you're on the back, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. For anybody that's the guide, I don't think I could ever find a guide if they had to ride on the back, because I don't think they would trust their life in my hands of trying to sit on the bike if they yell at me.
Well, you just gotta hope there aren't any ducks on the course.
Yes, exactly. As long as there's no ducks. So yeah, he rides in the front, and there's always questions of course, well, does he pedal? Does he not pedal? Yes, he pedals. He pedals as hard as he can, just like I do. And so in reality, in most races, we're just going against the other blind athletes and the other people that are on tandem bikes. Mm-hmm. But I also know from my own experience and my own training that it's very dependent on a tandem bike can not necessarily be an advantage depending on the course and the athlete. So I have hilly courses that gravity works exponentially against you, and very technical turny courses. I mean, there's a reason why NASCAR guys don't drive buses on a NASCAR circuit. So they don't turn very well, and they're not real fast at turning. So that's another thing. But long straightaways where you have a long part where you're just going straight, yeah, you can definitely get going some speed. And but the thing with the tandem is, if you don't ride with your guide or ride with your pilot a lot, you might have different cadences and things like that, and you might actually lose a lot of the power of maybe having 2 people by being inefficient and one person is trying to pedal at 60 RPMs and one person's trying to pedal at 110 RPMs, and the bike's going side to side more than it is going forward, it seems, because you're trying to fight each other, and all that is doing is losing power. The bike, even more so, you really have to be a team and work together and communicate, because then you're talking about in the swim, if you don't work together and communicate well, you just kind of don't go the wrong direction or something in the water. You don't communicate on the bike and you have a crash. And so it can be a dangerous thing. And so you have to talk and know what you're going to do when you're turning, and coordinate leaning together into the turns and stopping, have a plan of who's going to put down one foot or how you're going to start and stop. And so it's really, like I said, it's a lot of communication and a lot of kind of just working together and getting a feel for each other and things like that. Because if you're not working together and you're not working as a team on the tandem, you're not going to kind of maximize your potential of what you can do. So
yeah, and communication and efficiency seems like the key.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, and then from the bike, we get off the bike and go back and do the transition again, and then we get into the run, and we use the same type of tether, bungee cord tether around our waist on the run. On the run, you also have that he can give some verbal communication as long as he can breathe, right? And he's not breathing too hard, but he can give some verbal communication to me. But again, it's much of it is we've looked out and checked out the course and all that, and I've really learned over the years is that you hear at races and stuff like that. It's always the athlete's responsibility to know the course, and your first few years you just go to races and you just kind of like expect you got volunteers that are going to give you arrows to the course, and it's not going to be a problem because there's going to be other people and all that kind of stuff. But what I found, man, for blind and visually impaired athletes, if you know the course and you're confident about where you're going ahead of time, and then you also have the additional kind of cues just from your guide to give you on top of kind of having an idea of where you're going. It can give you so much more confidence, and just you can have such a better race and enjoy it a lot more.
Very, very cool. The breathing part, it sounded like you may have had a problem in the past with your guide not being able to breathe and talk to you.
Well, I tell people I fired a lot of guides.
Too slow.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have a guide contract. I really encourage people, and I'll talk about this later probably, encourage people to read my blogs. I try to make them pretty funny, and I came out with a guide contract. It's actually more of a funny thing than a real thing, but like just things that I expect from guides that want to guide me and stuff. But so it's just for fun. A lot of my stuff is for fun, but a lot of it is actually really educational as well. I've had a lot of experiences many times, and I've gotten myself into a lot of difficulties and situations because I've had guides that maybe I thought or they thought could guide me, but on the day of the race maybe they didn't have their best day or whatnot, and either I had to slow down, or there's been times in the heat of battle where I just decided to ask volunteers to come and me, and that was not probably the greatest of decisions on my part.
Maybe not. Very cool, though, to hear about all of those different rules. And as is the case with many sports, probably all sports, there's always controversy related to triathlon in general. We talked to Mike Pigg in episode number 51, I believe it was, and then also Kate Snow, and I think that was episode number 26, about drafting, and there are a lot of rules around that. For para-triathlon, there have been some interesting decisions made not too long ago. At one point, a rule was created which required visually impaired athletes to wear blackout glasses. So all of the athletes essentially were seeing the same thing, which is blackness. That rule was revoked. What was the thought process there? Well, there's two sides of it. And you know what? Over the years, I try to be as objective and non-biased as I can. But
I'm very protective of blind and vision impaired individuals and the rights, the opportunities, and really try to be an ambassador and a kind of a spokesperson for the blind and vision impaired. But the rule was created, to quote unquote level the playing field. I think that's this day and age. It's kind of like the fad right now is to make everything in this world or in terms of athletics equal, where you'll never do that, but there's this idea that you can, and so there's some people that have full vision, and this was the problem. People that had full vision thought, well, how can we make the individuals that have some vision and the individuals that have no vision more equal, or if there's differences, how can we make them equal and then put them into one category as opposed to having two categories? And they thought this would be fair, and so they'd put blackout glasses or make the blind all the blind individuals wear blackout glasses or a blindfold, basically, on the run portion of triathlon. They only thought it was important on the run, I guess.
So on that decision-making committee, was there anybody who competed or was a visually impaired athlete?
No. No blind or visually impaired individual had any input in this, other than if anybody did, maybe someone that was completely blind. That would be kind of assisted by the rule, or wouldn't be affected, I should say. But I can see, like I said, I look at it as an objective point of view. If you're looking at somebody outside and you're somebody that has full vision, well, you might think, well, okay, these people have no vision and these people have a little vision, and they both kind of live in this world with less vision, so they've lived in it. And so, well, what if we just kind of make the people that have a little vision completely blind, and then that must make it equal? That's a very outside viewpoint of it could be fair. But when you understand everything, and somebody that goes blind doesn't just immediately become able to compensate and function.
Yeah. Talk about diversity in the workplace. That illustrates how important it is for somebody to be on that decision-making committee who actually knows what's going on or can empathize with the athlete situation. I mean, again, that applies across all workplaces, right? That's why diversity is so important, because different people experience different things. One other more recent and a future decision that has been made comes from the IPC, International Paralympic Committee, deciding to exclude blind triathletes from the 2016 Paralympic Games in Rio. Why did they do this?
Triathlon's debuting in Rio in 2016, and the Paralympics, they included triathlon in the Paralympics, but there's 5 classifications of disability in triathlon, and they decided to only include 3 out of the 5. 3 for males and 3 for females, and not necessarily being the same categories for each. And so, I was been working with ITU and everything, and I was pretty much assured that the blind vision impaired males would be in Rio. And I think they made let's say the World Championships this last year. They made it out to be that the PT5 category, which is my category for males, was the headlining race to watch and everything. And
so we have PT1, PT2, 3, 4, and 5. For listeners, PT1 is hand cycle or wheelchair as spinal cord injuries. PT2, 3, and 4 are different levels of mobility impairments, mainly prosthetics, correct?
Yes, exactly. And then there's PT5. There's a few in that 2, 3, and 4. It is what you hit it right on the head. Mobility impairments. There is a few like CP athletes and things like that. It's a very difficult. Can't specifically say PT2 has these athletes. Right. Has these. It's a little variation of system. And then PT5 is the visually impaired category. And so on the male side, they did not include the PT5. To be honest, I was shocked. I had no idea that was going to happen. I had made out my plans for the next 2 years, and I had sponsorship type things lined up, and my pretty much life plans have been flipped around. But my viewpoint, and I've made this very clear with the IPC, and I'll talk to anybody about this, is I don't think triathlon should be in Rio if all the categories are not included. If you're going to include a sport in the Paralympics or in the Olympics, whatever it is, go all in or don't go at all.
You're trained in resilience, though, and there's still time, and we're all rooting for you, Aaron.
Thank you.
How can our listeners find out more about you? You have your own blog and website, right?
Yeah, I have my blog. It's called Through My Eyes, and my website is cdifferentwithaaron.com. It's the letter C, the word different, the word with, Aaron.com. And my blog is Through My Eyes, and so I always definitely encourage people to subscribe to my blog, because it's just a 1 week little email that's gives my latest blogs, and they're normally pretty funny and insightful, and it's really everything through my eyes. I also talk about a lot of how blind people live and get through life and that kind of thing. And of course, I'm on Twitter at Aaron Scheidies, and I have my own kind of Facebook fan and personal page and everything. So there's ways to get a hold of me and contact me if you want to. And I'd love people to respond to my anything, Twitter, blogs, anything like that, and really get involved and help my See Different with Aaron movement kind of grow to educate society on blind and vision impaired and what they can and can't do.
We will have links to all of those on our website on your Meister profile page, Aaron, MTNmeister.com. To close, I read that there isn't a cure yet for your condition, Stargardt's disease, but it doesn't seem impossible for a cure to be created someday, perhaps in the near future. Is this something on your mind?
Yeah, it's definitely on my mind. I think it's definitely amazing what they're doing with research. One thing is I feel like I've definitely learned how to live with the condition I have. And so I hope that I would never lose all of my vision. And so I don't really want to take a risk maybe on a trial that would I lose all of my vision, because I'm not that desperate. I've learned how to really succeed and become independent and everything on with the condition I have. But of course, if I can get my eyes and my vision restored to full vision, I would definitely take that. And I think they're on the path with the research of stem cells and different gene therapy and things like that they're doing, that in the next 5 to 10 years, they might have a pretty good some pretty good results from some trials and things like that, and some sort of cure maybe in my lifetime. So if I get that or have that opportunity, I don't know, but I think if we can impact other people's lives and allow them to be able to see the world fully and clearly, that would be amazing. So they're doing some great things.
Aaron Scheidies, wonderful having you on Mountain Meister. Thank you for sharing your journey. We look forward to watching it in the future. For the listeners, check out highlights of today's episode again on our website, MTNmeister.com, or check out everything that Aaron is doing at seedifferentwithaaron.com. Aaron, thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to that episode with Aaron Scheidies. Hope you enjoyed the discussion, and check in next time with us when we have Brian Warren, a mountain guide, on the show. We chat all things human behavior and how it relates to managing those humans on the mountain. If you ever feel like a mountain meister, let's say you summited a mountain or you learned resilience, show us. Hashtag your photos. Hashtag MTNmeister on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. And if your profile is public, we'll see it. If you'd like to send me something a little bit more private, shoot me an email, ben@mtnmeister.com. And as always, enjoy doing the rest of whatever you do when you listen to this podcast. I'm your host,